the most powerful werewolf in the world, Alpha King Alaric Blackwood, sat on a throne carved from obsidian, his power a crushing weight in the silent throne room. For 8 long years he had ruled alone, a king of ice, his heart shattered, his line presumed broken. Until she walked in. A small, ragged orphan girl who slipped past his legendary royal guard. She stared at the king, her eyes a perfect, impossible copy of his own, and in a voice that cut through the silence, she delivered a command that would shatter his world. "You're coming with me. I need a father." And the Alpha King, the man who feared nothing, froze in absolute shock. The grand throne room of the Obsidian Citadel was a place of crushing formality. Its vaulted ceilings were so high that clouds of incense gathered like captive spirits in the rafters. Stained glass windows depicted the blood-soaked history of the Blackwood lineage, and today they cast judgmental, colored light upon the assembled pack lords. Alpha King Alaric Blackwood, his face a mask of bored indifference, presided over the mundane. His black hair was threaded with the first distinguished signs of silver at the temples, though he was barely 30. His eyes, the color of a frozen winter sky, missed nothing and revealed less. He was listening to Lord Valerius Thorn, his chief advisor, drone on about grain tariffs for the border packs. "My king," Valerius was saying, his voice smooth and obsequious, "if we simply reallocate the southern stores, the Ashfang territory." A commotion at the massive oak doors interrupted him. A shout, a scuffle, the clang of armor. Alaric's head lifted, annoyance flickering in his gaze. His elite ebony guard did not permit interruptions. "Seize her!" one guard yelled. Then, a small, impossibly fast blur of rags and tangled brown hair shot past the guard's legs. She moved with an unnatural, lupine grace that belied her size, dodging the armored hands that tried to grab her. She sprinted down the long, crimson runner, right toward the dais, right toward the most powerful and dangerous wolf on the continent. The entire court gasped. Lord Valerius's jaw dropped. The guards froze, horrified at their failure. The child skidded to a stop at the foot of the throne. She couldn't have been more than 7 years old. She was thin, her tunic was patched, and her face was smudged with dirt. But she stood with a spine of steel. She wasn't breathing hard. She just stared up at Alaric, her chest heaving not from exertion, but from determination. Alaric leaned forward, his massive frame eclipsing the light. His voice was a low growl that vibrated the very stone. "You have 1 second to explain why the Ebony Guard has failed to stop a single, unarmed child." The girl didn't flinch. She didn't look at the guards. She didn't look at the whispering lords. She looked directly into Alaric's frozen eyes. "Because they are slow," she said, her voice clear and carrying. A few lords choked. Valerius looked apoplectic. "Guards, remove this filth from His Majesty's sight at once." 2 guards surged forward, but before they could reach her, Alaric raised a single, massive hand. The command was silent, but the effect was absolute. The guards slammed to a halt, as if they'd hit an invisible wall. The king's gaze dropped back to the child. He was intrigued, which was a forgotten, alien feeling. "And who, little one, are you to call my personal guard slow?" The girl planted her feet. "My name is Emma." "And what do you want, Emma?" Emma pointed a small, dirty finger directly at the Alpha King. Her next words were not a request. They were a decree, spoken with the absolute certainty of a child. "You're coming with me," she said, her voice ringing with an authority that didn't belong to a street orphan. "I need a father." Silence. Not just a lack of noise, but a void. A heavy, suffocating vacuum where all sound, all breath, all thought had died. The lords froze. The guard stopped breathing. Lord Valerius's pale face went sheet white, but Alaric didn't move. He simply stared. He wasn't shocked by the words. He was used to absurd requests. He was shocked by the face. He was a wolf. His senses were his life. And as the girl stood there, defiant, the scent of the room, the old stone, the beeswax, the cloying perfume of the lords, receded. All he could smell was her, pine needles after a storm, ozone, and something else, something impossible. He smelled kin. He smelled his own bloodline, and her eyes. They were not just blue. They were his eyes, the precise, icy, winter sky blue of the Blackwood Royal Alpha line, an eye color that had not been seen since his own, and one that was impossible to replicate. Lord Valerius finally found his voice, stammering, "Blasphemy! This is a trick, a rogue's plot. Guards, take her to the dungeons for interrogation." The guards moved again, but this time Alaric stood. The scrape of the obsidian throne against the marble floor was like a scream. The Alpha King rose to his full, terrifying height, his power flooding the room, not as a request, but as a physical force. Everyone, lords, guards, everyone, bowed their heads, their knees buckling under the pressure of his aura. Everyone except the girl. She just watched him, her head tilted, waiting. Alaric descended the dais, each step a hammer blow of finality. He stopped a foot away from her. He was a mountain of muscle and royal fury, and she was a sapling. He crouched down, a slow, deliberate movement, bringing his impossible eyes level with hers. The room held its collective breath. The king had not been this close to anyone in 8 years. He looked at her, really looked at her, seeing past the grime. He saw the proud set of her jaw, he saw the determined line of her mouth, and he saw the locket, tucked half-hidden into her tunic. It was tarnished and old, but he recognized the engraving. It wasn't the public royal crest. It was his personal sigil. A sigil he had given to only one person, a lifetime ago. A woman he had been told was dead. "What did you say your name was?" he asked, his voice no longer a growl but a shattered whisper. "Emma," she repeated. "And your mother?" Alaric's throat was tight. "Who is your mother, child?" Emma's eyes filled with a sudden, fierce pride. "Her name was Seraphina, and she told me that if I was ever in danger, I had to find the man who gave her this." She pulled the locket from her shirt. Alaric's blood turned to ice. He didn't just freeze, he shattered. Seraphina, a ghost, a memory, a lie. He looked from the locket to the girl's face, and the past 8 years of cold, empty rule collapsed around him. This was not a trick. This was not a plot. This was a reckoning. "Valerius," Alaric said, his voice terrifyingly calm. He didn't turn around. He didn't take his eyes off the girl. My king?" Valerius stammered, sweating. "Clear the throne room. Everyone, now." The massive doors of the throne room slammed shut, the boom echoing the frantic pounding in Alaric's chest. The silence that fell was different now. It was not the silence of the court. It was the silence of a tomb. He was alone with the child. Alaric sank back onto the steps of the dais, his power receding, as a wave of numbing disbelief washed over him. He was the Alpha King, a wolf whose senses could trace a single drop of blood from a mile away, who could hear a lie in the quiver of a heartbeat. And for 8 years, he had been blind. Emma watched him, her bravado fading into the cautious curiosity of a child. She had played her only card. She didn't know if it had worked. "Come here," Alaric said. His voice was rough. She hesitated, then took a few cautious steps forward. She was still clutching the locket in her small hand. "Let me see it." She held it out to him. His large, calloused fingers, scarred from a dozen battles, were surprisingly gentle as he took the small, silver medallion. It was warm from her skin. He turned it over. There, on the back, was the engraving he'd carved himself one stolen summer night, a single howling wolf silhouetted against a crescent moon. His sigil. "Where did you get this?" he asked, though he already knew. "My mother gave it to me," Emma said. She used to visit me at St. Jude's." "St. Jude's?" "The orphanage, in the lower district. She wasn't supposed to, but she came at night. She brought me food, and she told me stories." Alaric's heart ached. Seraphina, his fierce, proud Seraphina, sneaking into an orphanage to see her own child. What did she tell you?" "She told me about the forest," Emma whispered, her eyes glowing with remembered magic. "About the moon, and about a great, sad king who lived in a stone castle. She said he was strong and brave, but that he was lonely because he'd lost his heart." Alaric shut his eyes. The words were a knife in his ribs. "A few nights ago," Emma continued, her voice tightening, "men came. Not the usual men. These were different. They smelled wrong, like dust and rot. They found her. She fought them. She was so strong, Papa. King." She corrected herself. "She told me to run, to hide. And then they took her. Took her." Alaric's head snapped up, his icy eyes suddenly sharp. "They didn't hurt her? They took her away," Emma insisted, tears welling for the first time. She yelled at me, "Run, Emma, find him, find your father." So I ran. I ran all the way here. I hid in a baker's wagon, and I waited, and I found you." She looked at him, her small face desperate. "You're him, aren't you? You're the sad king. You're the one who lost his heart." Alaric couldn't speak. He stared at the locket. "She's alive. She was here, in this city, all this time, and she has a daughter. My daughter." The implications of the lie were staggering. 8 years. 8 years of mourning. 8 years of cold, empty vengeance against the rogues who had supposedly murdered his mated-by-heart. 8 years of his own adviser, Lord Valerius, standing at his side, offering condolences, managing the kingdom, and lying. The pieces slammed together with brutal, sickening clarity. Valerius, his father's most trusted adviser. Valerius, who had been so vocal about the unsuitability of a low-born border wolf like Seraphina. Valerius, who had confirmed the rogue attack. Valerius, who had presented him with a bloodied scrap of her cloak. Valerius, who had just tried to have this child, his own alpha-blooded heir, dragged to a dungeon. A low growl started in Alaric's chest, a sound that hadn't been heard in the citadel since the last war. It was the sound of a king's rage, a mate's fury, and a father's protective instinct converging into one lethal point. He stood up, the locket clenched in his fist. Emma, sensing the shift in the air, stepped back. Alaric looked down at her, the storm in his eyes softening for a fraction of a second. "You did well, Emma. You were brave. Braver than my entire guard." He strode to a side door, hidden behind a tapestry. He opened it, revealing Captain Gideon Shaw, the only man in the citadel Alaric trusted. Gideon, his face grim, had clearly been listening. "Gideon," Alaric ordered, his voice flat and deadly. "Take Princess Emma to my personal quarters, not the royal nursery, my quarters. Post the entire ebony guard on the door. No one enters. No one leaves. No one speaks to her. Not even Valerius. Especially not Valerius. Do you understand?" Gideon's eyes widened at the word princess, but he was a soldier. He nodded sharply. "Yes, my king." He looked at Emma, his gaze softening. "Come, little one. You are safe now." Emma looked at Alaric. "You're not coming?" Alaric knelt again, and this time he placed a hand on her shoulder. The contact was electric, a jolt of pure, paternal connection. "I have something I must do," he said, his voice raw. "I have to find your mother, but first, I have to take out the trash." He turned, his royal cape sweeping the floor, and strode back toward the main doors. He pulled them open, his face a mask of such terrifying, cold fury that the assembled lords outside stumbled back in fear. "Lord Valerius!" Alaric bellowed. His voice echoed through every hall of the citadel. "Attend me. Now." To understand the depth of Alaric's rage, you must understand the ghost named Seraphina. 9 years ago, Alaric was not a king. He was a prince, burdened by the expectations of his father, King Theron, and the suffocating protocols of the court. He was powerful, respected, and utterly miserable. He met her during a border dispute inspection near the Shadowlands. She was not a noble. She wasn't even from a recognized pack. She was Seraphina Vale, a warrior from a small, unaffiliated border clan. She was acting as a scout, and she'd mistaken him for a rogue. She'd held him at knife point for 3 minutes before his guard intervened. He had been enchanted. She was all the things the court was not. She was wild, her hair the color of autumn leaves, her eyes a startling, clear green. She smelled of pine and damp earth. She spoke her mind, she laughed too loudly, and she could outtrack any wolf in his guard. They were, in a word, impossible, and in another, inevitable. Their romance was stolen in secret. They met in the woods, by the waterfalls, under the light of the full moon. He was a prince, she was a commoner. But in the way of the wolf, none of that mattered. The moment he'd scented her, he'd known. She was his mate. Not a politically arranged, treaty-signing mate, but his true, fated Luna. He gave her the locket, his personal sigil, as a promise. One day, he'd sworn to her, all this, the court, the politics, it will bend to us. You will be my queen. Then his father found out. King Theron was furious, but it was Lord Valerius Thorn who had been the true poison. "My prince," Valerius had counselled him, his voice a veneer of sympathetic logic. "Think of the pack, a Luna with no bloodline, no allies. The other alphas will see it as a weakness. They will tear the kingdom apart. Your father, he will not allow it. He will have her removed for the good of the realm." "She is my mate," Alaric had roared. "She is a distraction," Valerius had countered smoothly, "and one your father will not tolerate. Be smart, Alaric. End this, send her away, or I assure you, the king will end her permanently." Alaric, young and caught between duty and love, had hesitated. He'd planned to run away with her, to abdicate his title, to live in the woods like a common wolf. He just needed one more day to prepare. He never got the chance. He went to their meeting spot, but she wasn't there. He'd tracked her scent, a frantic, desperate trail that ended in a clearing. There was a struggle, blood, and the scent of rogues. A week later, just as Alaric was mounting a blood-crazed, kingdom-wide search, Lord Valerius had arrived with the news. His scouts had found a rogue encampment. They had been too late. Seraphina was gone. All that was left was a scrap of her cloak, stained black with blood. Alaric had broken. His father died a month later, some said from a broken heart over his son's grief. Alaric ascended to the throne. The grief didn't just stay with him, it became him. It hollowed him out, and he'd filled the empty space with ice. He became King Alaric, the Cold One, the broken Alpha. He ruled with absolute, unwavering and merciless efficiency. And Valerius had been at his side the entire time, his most trusted advisor, the man who had helped him through his darkest hour. Now, Alaric stood in his private study, the the same room where Valerius had delivered the news of her death. He'd summoned him here. The locket felt like it was burning a hole in his palm. The doors opened. Lord Valerius entered, his face composed but his eyes wary. He could scent the king's rage. "My king, you summoned me. This disturbance with the child. It's an absurd claim. I have my best interrogators ready. She will tell us which rival pack sent her." "Her name is Emma," Alaric said, his back to the advisor. He was staring at a portrait of his father. A meaningless detail, Your Majesty. The girl is clearly a plant. Her mother's name is Seraphina." Valerius stopped. The blood drained from his face. "My king, I don't understand. Seraphina Vale died 8 years ago." "Did she?" Alaric turned, his movement slow, predatory. He held up the locket. "Then how do you explain this? I gave this to her the night before she died." Valerius's eyes widened, his practiced composure cracked. A copy, a forgery. This is a deep-laid plot, my king, to destabilize you. The girl has my eyes, Valerius." Alaric's voice was dropping, becoming the Alpha's growl. "She has my blood. I can smell it, and I can smell her mother's scent all over her." He stalked forward, invading Valerius's space. The older wolf trembled, his facade crumbling. "A forgery," Valerius stammered, but his heart was hammering a frantic rhythm of lies, lies against his ribs. 8 years, Alaric whispered, his voice shaking with a fury so profound it was almost silent. 8 years you stood by me. You watched me mourn. You advised me. You built your entire political career on the stability of my grief. It was for the good of the kingdom, Valerius finally shrieked, breaking. She was a liability, a low-born distraction. You were a prince. You would have thrown away your birthright for her. I did what I had to do." "What did you do?" Alaric grabbed the front of Valerius's robes, lifting him off the ground. The advisor's feet kicked uselessly in the air. "Tell me," Alaric commanded. Not as a king, as an alpha. The air pressure in the room dropped, and Valerius choked, his will collapsing under the raw power. "I didn't kill her," he gasped. "I swear on the moon, I didn't kill her." "Then where is she?" I exiled her. I couldn't risk you finding her. I sent her to the one place you would never look. The one place no one ever returns from." Alaric's blood ran cold. "Where?" Valerius was sobbing now. "The Ash Fang territory. I gave her to Alpha Malachi. I told him she was a rogue spy, that she was to be used. A prisoner, a breeder. I never thought she'd survive. I assumed she was dead by now, I swear. And the child. I heard she was born in the camp. When she was old enough, I had her rescued and brought to St. Jude's. A mercy, to keep an eye on her, to make sure the bloodline was contained. Contained. Alaric saw red. The thought of Seraphina, his mate, in the hands of Alpha Malachi. Malachi was not a wolf. He was a monster, a slaver, a sadist. He hadn't just lied. He hadn't just exiled her. He had sentenced her to a living hell. Alaric dropped Valerius to the floor. The advisor crumpled, weeping. "My king! Mercy! I did it for you! For the kingdom!" Alaric looked down at the man who had been his father's friend, his own mentor. He felt nothing. No, that was a lie. He felt a cold, precise calm. "Gideon," he called. The captain entered instantly, his face stone. "Take Lord Valerius to the dungeons, not the holding cells, the deep dungeons, the ones we reserve for high treason. Put him in chains and double the guard on my daughter." "Yes, my king." Gideon hauled the sputtering, weeping Valerius to his feet. "You can't do this!" Valerius shrieked. "I am Lord Chancellor. The court will do nothing," Alaric said, his voice the ringing of a funeral bell, "because I am going to get my queen, and when I return, she will deliver your sentence herself." Alaric moved through the citadel like a storm. He didn't run. He didn't need to. His long, purposeful strides devoured the corridors. Lords and servants alike flattened themselves against the walls as he passed, his aura a physical force of pure, distilled rage. He arrived at the oak-carved doors of his personal chambers. 2 members of the Ebony Guard, their spears crossed, snapped to attention. "My king!" "Report," Alaric bit out. "All quiet, sir. The princess," the guard said, the word still sounding strange on his tongue, "is inside. Captain Gideon brought her food. She refused it." Alaric nodded and pushed the doors open. The room was vast, dominated by a massive fireplace and a bed large enough for a family. Emma was not on the bed. She was not by the fire. She was huddled on the window seat, pressing herself against the thick glass, looking down at the city lights far below. She turned as he entered, her small body tense. She was a cornered wolf, ready to bolt or bite. Alaric's rage, which had been a white-hot sun, instantly banked. It didn't disappear, but it shielded itself. This small, brave girl didn't deserve his fury. She deserved his protection. He consciously softened his posture, unclenching his fists. He unclasped his heavy, fur-lined royal cloak and let it fall to the floor. He was still a king, but he was also a wolf and a father. "You haven't eaten," he said. It wasn't a question. Emma shook her head. Her eyes were fixed on his. "You found out." "I did." He walked to the window, not crowding her, but joining her. He looked out at the same view. "The man who lied to me. His name is Valerius. He has been dealt with. Is he the one who took my mother?" "He's the one who sent her away," Alaric said, his voice tight. "A long time ago. Before you were born." Emma absorbed this. She was preternaturally intelligent, her mind clearly sharpened by a life of surviving. "He's the reason she couldn't stay with me. He's the reason we were at St. Jude's." "Yes. And he's the reason you were the sad king." Alaric's throat closed. He could only nod. Emma looked back out the window. "Is she dead, like he told you?" "No," Alaric said, and the word was a vow. "She is not dead. Valerius, he sent her to a very bad place, a place called the Shadowlands, ruled by a cruel pack called the Ash Fangs. The men who took her, they were likely Ash Fang scouts." Emma's head snapped around. "Then why are we still here? We have to go. We have to get her." "I am going, Emma," Alaric said, finally turning to face her fully. "I am mobilizing my war council now. I will take my entire army, and I will burn the Shadowlands to the ground if I have to." "Good," Emma said, nodding. "I'll get my shoes." Alaric was taken aback. "What?" "No. Emma, you don't understand. This is not a journey. This is a war. It is the most dangerous place on the continent. You will stay here. You will be safe. Gideon will protect you." "No." Alaric bristled. He was not used to being told no by anyone, let alone a 7-year-old. "I am your king and your father. You will obey me in this." "You're not my father," Emma shot back, her eyes flashing with a familiar, stubborn fire he recognized from her mother. "Not yet. A father protects. A father is there. You weren't. And my mother needs us. Not just you. She told me to find you. That makes this my mission. I'm the one who found you. I'm the one who brought the locket. And I am not staying in this castle while she's in trouble." She was trembling, but her gaze was ferocious. She was, in every conceivable way, Seraphina's daughter. And his. Alaric stared at her, a strange, terrifying and wonderful pride blooming in his chest. This was the Blackwood blood. This was the fire of a true Luna. She was not weak. She was not a liability. She was a weapon. But she was still a child. "I cannot take you to a battlefield, Emma. I will not. You won't have to," she said, her mind working fast. "You're a king. You have an army. They fight. But you have to find her. I have to find her. She won't trust you." "What?" That stung. "She's my mate." "She's been alone for 8 years," Emma said, her voice filled with an adult's weary wisdom. "She's been hunted. She told me to trust no one but her. She'll think you're a trap. She'll think you're with them. But she'll trust me." He was about to argue, to tell her she was a child, that her logic was flawed. But as he looked at her, he knew, with the chilling certainty of a wolf's instinct, that she was right. Seraphina, betrayed by the royal court, hunted by Malachi, would be a feral, cornered, and deeply suspicious creature. She might see Alaric's army as just another set of captors, but she would never, ever see her daughter that way. It was an insane risk. It was a terrible, reckless, irresponsible decision as a father. But as a king and a mate, it was the only strategic move that made sense. "You will not leave my side," Alaric said, his voice a low growl of command. "Not for 1 second. You will be tethered to me. You will ride in a protected carriage. When we fight, you will be locked in. If I tell you to run, you run. If I tell you to be silent, you will not breathe. Is that understood?" Emma's face split into a smile. It was the first time he'd seen her smile. It transformed her. She looked just like Seraphina. "I understand," she said. "Good." Alaric stood up and strode to the door. He threw it open. "Captain Gideon!" Gideon was there in an instant. "My king, forget the war council. We are not taking the army. An army is too slow. It's too loud. Seraphina could be dead by the time we arrive." Gideon's tactical mind was already working. "A small insertion team, my king?" "Just us," Alaric said. "You, me, and the 10 best wolves from the Ebony Guard. The fastest, the quietest, the most lethal. We ride light, and we ride now. We are not declaring war. We are extracting our Luna." Gideon nodded, his eyes grim. "And the princess?" Alaric looked back at Emma. She was already by the door, pulling on a small, worn pair of boots. "The princess," Alaric said, a note of grim pride in his voice, "is coming with us. Prepare the royal warded carriage and pack rations for 2. They rode for 2 days straight, pushing their mounts to the brink of collapse. Alaric, Gideon, and the 10-man Ebony Guard were a silent, grey blur moving through the kingdom. They were all in their wolf forms, a massive pack of shadows, their paws eating up the miles. Emma was not with them. She was following, hidden, in the magically warded carriage that rode with the speed of the wind, driven by the court's pack mage, an old wolf named Elias. They bypassed towns, crossed rivers at night, and avoided all major roads. Alaric was a man possessed. Every second that passed was a second. Seraphina was in Malachi's hands. He imagined 1,000 horrors, each one fueling the icy, controlled rage that propelled him forward. On the 3rd morning, the land changed. The lush green forests of the kingdom gave way to petrified, blackened trees and acrid, sulphurous air. The ground was grey and cracked. This was the border of the Shadowlands, a territory poisoned by the dark and brutal rule of the Ashfang pack. They regrouped in a hidden ravine, the carriage hidden by Elias's concealment spells. "My king," Gideon said, his voice low. "The air is thick with their patrols, scent markers everywhere. They know we're close. Malachi will have been warned by Valerius's captured messengers." Alaric dismounted, shifting back into his human form. He was grim, his face caked with dust. It doesn't matter. They know a king is coming. They don't know the king is here. He went to the carriage. Emma was inside, pale but resolute. "We're here, aren't we?" "We are," Alaric said. He handed her a small, dark cloak. "From now on, absolute silence. Elias will keep the carriage shielded, but I need you with me. You will ride with me. Can you do that?" She just nodded, pulling the cloak over her small shoulders. "Good." Alaric secured her in front of him on his massive war horse, a beast as dark and silent as the night. He turned to his men. "We don't go to Malachi's fortress. That's what he'll expect. We find his prison, his pit. That's where he keeps his trophies." Gideon had a map, procured from Valerius's files. "The intelligence says it's an old iron mine, north of the fortress, heavily guarded." "Then that's where we go," Alaric said. "Ebony Guard, form a perimeter. We move." They moved through the twisted, dead forest like ghosts. The silence was unnerving. There were no birds, no insects, just the sound of their horses' muffled hooves on the dry earth. They were halfway to the mine when the ambush came. It wasn't a sound, it was a scent, a wave of rotting, fetid air. "Down!" Alaric yelled, shielding Emma with his own body as a half-dozen massive grey-furred wolves burst from the rocks above. The Ebony Guard sprang into action, a flurry of steel and claws. They were outnumbered 3-1, but they were the king's elite. They fought with a cold, brutal precision. Alaric leaped from his horse. Emma held tight to his chest with one arm, his sword in his other hand. An ash-fang wolf, its eyes yellow and mad, lunged for him. Alaric didn't flinch. He met the wolf mid-air, his sword arm a blur. The wolf fell, its head severed. "Papa!" Emma screamed, pointing. Another wolf was charging, not at Alaric, but at Gideon, who was already engaged with 2 others. It was Malachi's second-in-command, a brute named Korg. Alaric didn't have time. He couldn't get to him. "Emma, hold on! Tight! What?" Alaric threw them. With a roar, he shifted, his human form exploding into that of a massive black wolf, twice the size of any ash-fang. He kept Emma secure on his back, his fur a protective cocoon, and landed between Gideon and Korg. Korg skidded to a halt, his mad eyes widening in pure terror. He hadn't just ambushed a patrol. He had ambushed the Alpha King. Alaric didn't give him time to think. He was on him, a black shadow of royal fury. The fight was over in seconds. Alaric's jaws, which could snap steel, closed around Korg's throat. The other ash-fang wolves, seeing their leader fall to this monster, whimpered and fled. Alaric stood over the body, his great chest heaving. He gently, carefully, let Emma slide from his back. She was shaking, her eyes wide, but she wasn't crying. She was awestruck. Gideon, bleeding from a gash on his arm, bowed his head. "My king." Alaric shifted back, his clothes miraculously intact, a perk of royal alpha magic. He was breathing hard. "That was their alpha scout. They know we're here now. The element of surprise is gone." "They'll be running to the mine," Gideon said, binding his arm. "They'll be fortifying." "Let them," Alaric said. He picked up Emma, settling her on his hip. She wrapped her small arms around his neck and buried her face in his shoulder. He felt a fierce, primal surge of possessiveness. "Mine." "We're done being quiet," Alaric said, his voice carrying to his men. "We're going to the mine, and we are going to knock." The mine was a scar on the earth, a deep black quarry that reeked of misery and despair. It was surrounded by a high, ramshackle fence of sharpened logs, and guards were visible on the ramparts, ash-fang wolves, armed with crude crossbows and swords. Alaric and his small team stood on a ridge overlooking it. The trap was obvious. The gates were closed and the guards were waiting. "They've funneled us," Gideon observed. A classic choke point. We charge the gate. They rain down arrows. The fortress will empty, and Malachy will have us surrounded. He thinks, Alaric said. He pointed to the back of the quarry, where a waterfall of refuse and slag tumbled down the cliff. That's our way in. Elias. The old mage stepped forward. A cloaking spell, my king? Something better, Alaric said. A distraction. Elias grinned, his old eyes twinkling. He raised his staff and began to chant. A few moments later, on the far side of the compound, a massive, spectral bear, wreathed in blue flame, roared and began to charge the main gate. The guards on the walls panicked. "Rogue beast, sound the alarm. All hands to the gate." As the Ash-Fang pack scrambled to fight a phantom, Alaric, Gideon, Emma, and the Ebony Guard slipped over the refuse wall like water, silent and unseen. They landed in the pit. The smell was overwhelming. It was a prison camp. Dozens of wolves, some old, some young, all thin and wearing the same grey, hopeless expression, were huddled in pens. They stared as Alaric and his soldiers landed, their eyes wide with fear. "Where is he?" Alaric growled to the nearest prisoner, an old man. "Where is Malachy?" The old man just trembled. He is coming, from the fortress. He is coming for her." "Her?" Alaric's blood froze. "Seraphina. Where is she?" The den," the man whispered, pointing to a reinforced steel door at the far end of the pit. "He heard you were coming. He's gone to silence his trophy." A primal roar of terror and rage tore from Alaric's throat. "Gideon! Get Emma! Free these prisoners! That door is mine!" Alaric crossed the compound in 3 bounds. The 2 guards at the door didn't even have time to raise their weapons. Alaric took them apart. He reached the steel door. It was barred from the outside. He ripped the massive 2x4 wooden bar from its hinges and kicked the door. It exploded inward. He plunged into the darkness, his wolf eyes adjusting instantly. It was a cave, dank, wet. And in the back, a small, flickering torchlight. He heard a scuffle, a man's grunt, and a woman's voice, snarling, "I will end you, you pig!" Alaric ran. He burst into the small cavern, and he saw Alpha Malachy, a giant, scarred brute of a wolf, had a woman pinned against the wall. He had a knife to her throat. And the woman, it was her. She was not the girl he remembered. The soft edges were gone, replaced by hard, sharp lines. Her autumn hair was matted and streaked with grey. A long white scar ran from her temple to her jaw. She was thin, but her body was coiled muscle. And her eyes. Her green eyes were not soft. They were chips of emerald ice, burning with a hate so pure it was almost holy. She was staring at Malachy, completely focused, looking for an opening. She hadn't even seen Alaric. "So," Malachy was sneering, "your king did come for you. A little late, my dear. 8 years too late. He'll get to watch you die. A fitting end." "Alaric," Seraphina whispered, her gaze flickering to the entrance for the first time. She saw him. Her eyes widened. Disbelief. Shock. Then fury. "You!" she spat, and her venom wasn't for Malachy. It was for him. "You left me here. You left me." "No," Alaric roared, his heart shattering. "Seraphina, I thought you were dead. Valerius!" "I don't care about your excuses," she screamed. Malachy laughed, a wet, guttural sound. "Oh, this is perfect. The lovers' reunion." He tightened his grip, and Seraphina winced. That was all Alaric needed. "Get away from her," Alaric snarled, and he launched himself across the room. He didn't go for Malachy. He went for the hand holding the knife. He was a blur of motion, smashing Malachy's wrist against the stone wall. The bone snapped, The knife clattered to the floor. Malachi howled in pain and rage, lashing out with his other hand, claws extended. He raked Alaric across the chest. Alaric roared, not in pain, but in annoyance, and drove his fist into Malachi's gut. The larger wolf stumbled back, but Serafina was already moving. She hadn't been a prisoner. She had been a survivor. She grabbed the fallen knife and, with a warrior's scream, plunged it into Malachi's thigh. Malachi bellowed and backhanded her, sending her flying. The cavern exploded. Alaric shifted, his massive black alpha form filling the small space. Malachi, his leg ruined, tried to shift too, but Alaric was on him. It wasn't a fight, it was an execution. Alaric, the king, the mate, the father, tore his rival apart. He stood over the body, panting, his black fur slick with blood. Then the rage cleared. He turned, shifting back. Serafina was pushing herself up from the floor, her lips split, her green eyes wary. She still had the knife, and it was pointed at him. "Sarah," he whispered, his heart in his throat. "It's me." "I know who you are," she said, her voice a rasp. "Where is my daughter? What have you done with my daughter?" "She's safe," Alaric said, holding up his hands. "She's outside. She's with Gideon. She's the one who found me. She saved us." Serafina's face crumpled. The ice cracked. The knife wavered. "Emma? She's here?" "Mama." A small voice came from the cave entrance. Alaric and Serafina both turned. Emma stood there, her small face pale. Gideon was right behind her, his sword out, but he was holding her back. "Mama!" Emma screamed again, and she broke free from Gideon's grasp. She ran past Alaric, past the blood, and launched herself into Serafina's arms. Serafina dropped the knife and caught her, collapsing to her knees, her face buried in her daughter's tangled hair. She sobbed, not quiet tears, but great, gasping, animal wails of grief and relief. 8 years of pain, of terror, of loss poured out of her. My baby. I thought they took you. I thought he had you. I found him, Mama," Emma cried, clinging to her. "I found him just like you said. I found the sad king." Serafina looked up, her tear-filled emerald eyes meeting Alaric's. He stood there, bloody and bruised, his heart exposed. He hadn't just rescued his mate. He hadn't just found his daughter. He had found his family, and he was never, ever letting them go again. The journey home was not the silent, frantic race the journey out had been. It was a slow, careful procession. Alaric had liberated the prison. The wolves of the Ash Fang pack, their alpha and his lieutenants dead, had surrendered, their brutal regime broken in a single night. Alaric had claimed the territory, not for his kingdom, but for the liberated prisoners, installing the old man he'd first spoken to as the new, interim pack leader. He had taken only 2 things from the Shadowlands: Malachi's head and his family. Serafina was quiet for most of the ride. She was healing, physically and mentally. She sat in the carriage with Emma, the 2 of them wrapped in a cocoon of whispered stories, relearning each other. Alaric rode beside the carriage, his face a grim mask, but his ears were trained on the sound of their voices. He was their guardian. He was their shield. They spoke on the second night, while Emma slept. Serafina had stepped out of the carriage to stand by the fire. She was wearing one of his tunics. It was too large for her, but it smelled like him. "You didn't know," she said. It wasn't a question. "I didn't," he replied, his voice hoarse. "He told me you were dead. He showed me blood. I believed him. I've been in mourning for 8 years, Sarah. My entire kingdom, my entire life." She looked at him, really looked at him. She saw the silver at his temples. She saw the new lines of grief etched around his eyes. He was not the boy she'd loved. He was a king, forged in ice. "He told me," she said, her voice distant, "that you had agreed, that you'd chosen the crown over me. He said you'd allowed him to handle me. And when I found out I was pregnant, I knew I had to hide her. I gave her to the orphanage to keep her safe from you." Alaric's face contorted in pain. "Seraphina, I would have burned the continent to the ground for you. I would have abdicated. I tried." She stepped forward and, tentatively, touched the healing gashes on his chest from Malachi's claws. "I know. I see it now." She looked at Emma, sleeping peacefully. "She has your eyes. I hated them at first. They were a reminder of what I'd lost. But she also has your stubbornness. She has your fire," Alaric countered, covering her hand with his. Their skin touched. It was a jolt, a spark of the mate bond, buried but not broken. "What now, Alaric?" she asked. "Now," he said, "we go home. We have a trial. And then we have a coronation." When the royal party returned to the Obsidian Citadel, the court was in chaos. Valerius's allies had been trying to spin a narrative, that the king was mad, that he'd abducted a child, that he'd gone to start a war. It all stopped when Alaric walked into the throne room. He was not wearing his crown. He walked in, his black armor still stained with the dust of the Shadowlands. By his side, holding his hand, was Princess Emma. And on his other side, her head held high, her scar a mark of honor, was Seraphina. A collective gasp went through the hall. This was not a ghost. This was a queen. "Bring the prisoner," Alaric commanded. Lord Valerius Thorn was dragged in, his fine robes tattered, his face pale. He saw Seraphina, and his world ended. "No, no, impossible!" "Valerius Thorn!" Alaric's voice boomed. "You are brought before this court on charges of high treason, the betrayal of your king, the false imprisonment of your queen, and the attempted assassination of the royal bloodline. I did it for the kingdom," he shrieked. "You did it for power," Seraphina said, her voice clear and cold, cutting through his. "And you cost me 8 years with my daughter. You cost me my home. You cost my king his heart." She stepped forward, Alaric and Emma at her side. A perfect, unbroken family. "I am Seraphina Vale of the Border clan. I am the true mate to Alpha King Alaric Blackwood. And this," she said, resting her hand on Emma's head, "is Princess Emma, your heir." The court fell to its knees. The line was not broken. The king was not cold. The pack had a future. Valerius was banished, not killed, Seraphina insisted. "He will live a long life in the Shadowlands, in the same pit he sent me to, and he will reflect on the good of the kingdom he created." It was a fate worse than death. 3 weeks later, the Obsidian Citadel was no longer a place of grey mourning. It was draped in the royal colours of black and forest green. The coronation was the largest in a century. Alaric stood on the balcony, his heavy crown finally feeling right on his head. By his side, wearing a matching crown, was Queen Seraphina. And in front of them, waving to the cheering crowds, was Princess Emma, no longer in rags, but in a fine green dress, her locket polished and worn on the outside, a symbol of her journey. Alaric looked at his mate, his queen. He was no longer the sad king. His heart, which he thought lost, was beating stronger than ever. Seraphina leaned into him. "A little different than the woods, isn't it?" she whispered. Alaric laughed, a true, warm laugh that echoed across the square. He pulled her and Emma into his arms. "It's better," he said, kissing them both. "It's home." And so, the reign of the Cold King ended, and the time of the Wolf Queen and her brave princess began. The lie that had lasted for 8 years was shattered by one small, brave girl who just needed a father. But in the end, it was King Alaric who needed her more. He didn't just gain a daughter, he regained his soul, his mate, and his pack. Justice was finally served, and the broken family was made whole. What did you think of Emma's courage? And how about Seraphina's incredible strength? This story is a powerful reminder that no lie can last forever, and that true love and true family will always fight its way back. If you loved this story of karma, justice, and reunion, let us know in the comments. Don't forget to like this video and share it with someone else who loves a story where the villains get what they deserve. And of course, subscribe to the channel. We have new stories coming every week, and you won't want to miss a single one. Thanks for listening.